come once again to discuss things.
And on that note, hi everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Geeky Gentlemen, the episode of Geeky Gentlemen where we're talking about what we should have been talking about last time, but instead we talked about prequels last time. But this time we are not talking about prequel, but I would love to see a prequel for this film.
That'd be weird.
We're talking about Snowpiercer. And awkward silence, yes. This awkward silence is truly a metaphor for just the reflective state that you were left in after watching Snowpiercer.
The way you said Snowpiercer, it felt like you were leading up to another sentence, and I just thought you were pausing for dramatic effect.
No, I don't pause for dramatic effect.
Yeah, what is he, William Shatner?
Anyway, so yeah, we're talking about Snowpiercer. This came out in 2013?
2014.
Yeah, it came out 2014, but it was released in South Korea in 2013.
Okay, is someone rubbing their mic? Because I'm getting like some really loud scratches. Or is anyone eating Cheetos or something?
I wish I was eating Cheetos.
I like Cheetos.
Anyway, I'm just getting some feedback. So anyway.
Yeah, but it's a movie that came out in 2014, pretty much everywhere, but it came out in South Korea in 2013 first, mostly because it's based on a French graphic novel, and from what I understand, it mostly didn't interest anyone except the director, who is from South Korea.
Gotcha. And it's so weird. It's like hard to find anything that isn't based on a graphic novel at this point, right?
Oh yeah.
Like all these original films, quote unquote, and it's like, oh, actually, it's based on this graphic novel, and you're like, son of a bitch.
Well, it was interesting because we did the end of the year Geekvolution Awards at one point, and one of the categories is what the best comic book film is, and what the best dramatic film is. So there was like a distinction. If you pick dramatic film, it can't be a comic book film, and we ran into this technical difficulty of 90% of people not realizing Snowpiercer was a comic book movie.
That's crazy. Anyway, so yeah, Snowpiercer, interesting film, some neat ideas in it, but what inspired the pick for this is Milan wanted to talk about transhumanism, and I believe Milan's at work, so that's why he's not here. But anyway, Milan wanted to talk about transhumanism, and Steve proposed this. And I don't, like, there are a couple scenes, but I don't quite see the connection.
It's not a transhumanist film exactly, but I do think it's a film about everything, and I feel like this movie ultimately makes a case for transhumanism and the evolution of human nature and such before it's actually about that idea itself.
Okay, because I was thinking something more along the lines of Transcendence, even though I don't know the quality of that film.
I've heard mixed things.
It is terrible.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we'll talk about this still. I mean, I still think it was an interesting film. So let's just real quick go round robin and give a, do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you have mixed feelings? I'm gonna start by saying I have mixed feelings. Steve, how about you?
I love it. It's one of my favorite movies.
Okay, and Connor?
I kind of hate this movie.
Wow, we covered the whole gambit.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yay. All right, so Connor, since you have the most dissenting opinion, and Steve, since you love it and it's one of your favorite movies, and since I'm right in the middle here, you guys are now going to fight for my approval.
To the death.
Yes, exactly. Steve, metaphorically, you will have a toy train to battle with, and Connor, you get some protein bars. Now go. No, Connor. So explain why you hate this movie.
I should probably say, like, objectively, I think this movie has a lot of story issues, and it's very ambitious, but I think some of the they didn't have quite the budget to effectively tell some of the story. So that's, just kind of just some filmmaking snafus. But, it's just kind of fine on a filmmaking level. On a story level, it's not my kind of a movie. Because I don't like how Ed Harris just pops out of a door drunk out of his mind and explains the movie to the audience. But on a subjective level, this movie just annoyed me. I don't like how one-sided it feels. I guess I'll just leave it at that.
Interesting, because for me, what I like are the politics, but they do feel a little... I mean, it's meant to be a bit of a preaching, classic sci-fi movie. Look at the error of this line of thinking. It's meant to be that in a lot of ways. And so the politics I do find really attractive, and that's the thing I like the most about it. But yeah, I could agree that, maybe there's a bit of a better argument on the other side of this besides, oh, well, we need people to remember their place and stuff. It's like, that seems a little bit cartoon villainy at times of a way to portray it. And I think the problem with not giving complexity to the way in which you portray the other side, quote unquote, is it makes you seem like you don't have a very well thought out opinion. It makes you sound like kind of a pissed off teenager more than someone that actually, has thought about and considered the politics of a situation. Steve, besides the politics, what do you love about this movie?
I'm gonna disagree completely with both of the things that you guys don't like and say that I think it's brilliant because it's not one-sided. A lot of the issues, I think maybe it would be easier to go into what I like about the movie. I could just ask both of you a question, which is, who do you think is the movie trying to say is right? Because if you say Chris Evans, then you're wrong.
Well, the thing is, I don't think there's any one character that's right. I think that the ideology of the people at the front of the train is so demonized and antagonized that it's by extension giving a lot of sympathy to the ideology of the rear of it. And I mean, John Hurt, he's revealed. There's a reveal about his character, and I know there's some darkness within Chris Evans. Although I think they hold their hand too long about that. I think that what the actions of the people at the back of the train is fully condoned by this movie.
See, I don't agree at all. I think this movie is saying that the back of the train and the front of the train are both wrong, and that's the problem. The thing about this movie is, on a directorial level, is that some of the most interesting things that are being done here are just being done by the way the camera is turning to different directions. Like, the movie is, look at the right and look at the left. Look at the right, look at the left. The whole movie is, there is a progression from back to front and front to back, and the biggest thing that to take away from it is that Chris Evans is not right because his method to get to the front is the same thing as the method that created a front and back in the first place. And so the hero at the end of the day is that guy with the daughter that is able to break out of the train and move outside of the left and right structure of the train, away from the up and down. And so no one in this movie is right about anything. The movie is saying, having a linear thought process about these ideologies, it's what makes ideology dangerous in the first place. It's a critique on the idea that everything has to be a dichotomy. Interesting.
So this is almost more of an evolution, the pick for Snowpiercer is almost more of an evolution off of the idea of that we were talking about at the end of the show last week when we were talking about how society is just becoming very polarized, very dichotomic.
Exactly.
That's interesting. And see, I'd agree. I think Chris Evans is just as wrong for different reasons as Wilford.
I forget his name.
I think it's Wilford. I think you're just as right with that assessment. But I still feel like, do you feel like Ed Harris's character and the whole front section of the train is more demonized than the back section of the train?
I don't think so, because I feel like really early on, because the more you watch this movie, the more stuff like this becomes clear. I think really early on, you think that that happens because you're behind the people on the back of the train. So anything they do, you're not really thinking about in the same sort of moral context as you're thinking about the people they're going against. But when you go back and look at what's actually happening and the way the people in the back of the train are fighting, they are as brutal, if not more brutal or worse than the people in the front. So it's just as exaggerated on both sides, and Chris Evans becomes one of the most unsympathetic characters here because he's entirely unable to jump on either side of the fence, and so he's a non-entity that thinks he's moving forward, and everyone on both sides are cartoon-like violent because that's the only way they know how to go, is that they have been so locked into this pattern that they're both caricatures, and Chris Evans is just the blank slate in the middle that doesn't realize that being human is more than simply having a goal.
I think I have to disagree about. I mean, the thing is, because we are with the people from the back of the train longer, we do associate them as the protagonists. But I don't think I agree with you when you say that they're both being presented on the same kind of level. But I think a much more effective, like what you're saying about this movie, about its critique of both the right and the left, I think honestly it was handled better in something like the Lego Movie, which has a character who is kind of stuck into into a routine, and then he's busted out of it, and then we see the extreme conservative side with Lord Business and all of what happens there. But then we go straight to Cloud Cuckoo Land, which is extremely liberal left wing, and how that like falls apart instantaneously when the people from Lord Business show up. And then at the end, when they have to make peace and come together for anything to really get done. Maybe it is just more of an optimistic kind of a movie, and that's just what I respond to a little bit more. But with this movie, I felt like the stuff when they go to the classroom and all the cartoonishness of how ignorant the people at the front of the train are really started to grate on me, because I got the point very early on, and then it almost felt like the director of this movie kept hammering it in for a reason, but I couldn't understand what the reason was.
But I think that is the reason. I think the reason is you become so programmed to look at things in a certain way that you don't realize you're being bombarded by it constantly. And so the way the movie is operating is, as you progress more and more towards the end of the train, you're seeing things become more and more obvious, and by the end of the movie, it's saying that you're not having these revelations by going forward. All you're really doing is digging back deeper into your mind and realizing it's always been there. That when you get to particularly when you get to the car with all the children, and the whole idea just being that this is the most colorful section, and this is where you enculturate people to be a certain way, and once you do that at a certain age, it becomes impossible to recognize the assumptions you're making about things. And that's partly why the guy and his daughter are the only ones that leave at the end, and that he keeps telling her to look outside the window and not forward, is because there needs to be more than just what's being hammered into you constantly. And so I think the reason it's so obvious and the reason it's so gloomy is because it's trying to put you into it's trying to make you look at what the world is through the movie. Like, it's trying to make you understand that this is what your day-to-day life is, you just don't realize it.
Okay,
I mean, it goes back to my favorite quote to describe the movie is that you can't see your assumptions because you see with them, and that's what the movie's trying to highlight.
Interesting. See, like for me, those scenes kind of they kind of bothered me, not so much because like I did pick up a little bit on that. Like I did pick up a little bit on what you're talking about, Steve. I didn't quite interpret it that well in my head. I probably would have if I watched it a couple more times, just to toot my own horn, I guess. No, but I didn't pick up on that immediately, but I I definitely see where you're coming from there, and I kind of felt things like that. Like I found all that stuff really interesting. I thought it was great world building, if nothing else. My problem with those scenes, and like you keep getting stuff like that as they get further and further ahead of the train, because they do the sushi scene as well. You keep getting stuff like that, and it's like it feels like the movie just stopped so we can have world building. It feels like the plot of the movie stopped, and really awkwardly when you think about how a lot of the other things are timed out. Particularly like the children's scene, it makes it work because it makes it look like they're scrambling to get their ducks in a row, with the eggs and all that stuff. But particularly when they're at the end of the train and they're like trying to get into the engine, and like Chris Evans and the dude just sit there and talk for like a good 5 minutes. And I probably noticed how long that was because the version I watched didn't have subtitles, so there's just some dude speaking a language that I don't know for like a good 2 minutes. So I'm gonna ask about that in a sec. But like I feel like the whole movie just stops for like these world building or exposition scenes and or character development scenes, but the whole plot of the movie stops. It's really awkward because of like, okay, they just stole those people's coats and drugs and stuff, and then like went 10 feet forward and just chilled, and then those people just waited till they had this nice heart-to-heart conversation to start beating them up. So there's like little like stuff like that. It just, the logic of the world broke down so that we could get those points hammered in. So I feel like I feel like I'm noticing and getting tired of those points being hammered in more because it's interrupting the flow of the story.
It's funny you say that because that scene between the Korean dude and Chris Evans where he's smoking the cigarette is like, as much as I don't like this movie, I love that scene. I really love that scene.
What is he telling Chris Evans during that? Because I get that he wants him to blow up the door to the train and get out. But what is he telling him?
He's telling him a story. I'm trying to remember what it is. Steve, do you remember what it is?
Not off the top of my head. I know basically he's trying to he keeps reiterating the same things throughout the whole movie. Like he's basically just telling Chris Evans the same thing he's telling his daughter of not simply trying to look one way. But I forget the story exactly, and the story makes that point different.
I remember he's talking about how every year they'd pass by the same thing, and then he's noticed that the ice was melting, and that's why he wants him to blow it up.
Okay. Oh, so it's getting warmer out again.
Yeah.
All right.
Now correct me if I'm wrong. I might sound extremely ignorant with this, but I didn't really perceive it the way Steve perceived it, and maybe it's because I'm just reading into like some of the visual symbols that maybe might have been unintentional. But I felt like this was an outdated critique of Bush-era America.
Nah.
See, okay. I don't agree with that at all. I don't think it is that.
Because, I don't know, I just thought the, Wilfred has a big W, and then, I don't know, I kind of felt like the whole part on the school cart with all the kids was like no child left behind. Like there was stuff to read into throughout all of this stuff.
Well, remember that this director and the writer, this stuff was made independently of Bush. So like a lot of what we get here has more in connection with stuff like Margaret Thatcher than it does with George W. Bush. But George W. Bush has a lot in common with things like that. So maybe that's just you're having like a different like point of reference. But it's not intentionally that.
Okay, that's fair, because I don't know, maybe it's just when I felt like the movie just kept stopping, and maybe that's just at the time when I watched this, I had a very limited view on politics.
Right.
So I felt like the movie kept stopping to push this sort of like anti-Bush agenda, which I was like, no one likes Bush. Why are we still dragging on Bush? It's like, how many years later?
I mean, how, like, seriously, Cotter, what a, just striking point. No one likes Bush. How bad a president do you have to be for Oliver Stone to make an awful just railing against you biopic of you while you're still in office?
This is true.
That's the thing that amazes me about W. It's not a very good movie, but like it's just this scathing critique of George W. Bush that just, it doesn't call him like a monster or anything. It just tells it like it is, that he was an idiot who was way too ambitious, and then somehow lucked into it because of his daddy's name.
Yeah.
But anyway, getting away from Bush, no, I definitely see that it's just kind of it's got a lot of critique of just right-wingism and Reaganomics and just that whole, the upper class, know your place. The shoe does not go on the head.
Oh my god, no, I have flashbacks. Okay, Tilda Swinton, I know everyone loves Tilda Swinton. Tilda Swinton's a great actress. But when she got nominated for a BAFTA or a Hugo or something that wasn't an Oscar for this movie, and I can't fathom why. It's the easiest performance to give. You just hide behind a wig and a big set of glasses and a bunch of makeup and just be as irritating as you possibly can. Oh my god, it hurt me to watch her scenes. I really don't like Tilda Swinton in this movie.
Steve?
I don't know. I dug her. Because it's just a matter of, in places it is turning into a cartoon, but it's supposed to be. I thought her performance was the perfect encapsulation of what this movie is. This movie is a bunch of loud effects and makeup and thrown in your face jargon, and the more you hate it, the more you get what it's trying to make you think about. I think her performance basically just boils down to, these are the type of people we're criticizing, and not just in the upper class, but in the lower class. Just the idea of people thinking that they can, that platitudes or happy-go-lucky attitudes solve things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's I'm not being articulate right now, but there's something about Tilda Swinton and just the way they present. We're not given the depth at all between any of the characters that that quote are at the front of the train. And I know that we're not supposed to have depth into them until we get to Wilfred. But at that point, I kind of got what the movie was saying about, Wilfred's ideology. So when Wilfred just popped out in Ed Harris's drunk and he's just explaining the entire movie, it really felt like a middle finger to me. I was too stupid to get it, but I got it, and now you're explaining it to me, and then, oh my goodness.
No, that's fair. But again, I just go back to the idea of but that's what it's trying to do. It's going to the idea of just, you can't see the things that have been hammered into you, because they're always hammered into you. And so the movie never stops being in your face, because the things it's arguing against are always in your face and you just don't notice.
Yeah, and maybe this is just a difference in taste between you and me. But for what I like in a movie is when, and this is where it gets very subjective. So I think it's cool that you can appreciate that, and I guess I just can't. But when it comes to somebody just hammering something in for the sake of hammering it in, I feel it becomes redundant, and I want when the director makes, or the writer makes, his or her point about a specific thing that they're trying to push, whether it be the whole how did you say it? Assumptions, we can't be led by assumptions. How did you put that?
Oh yeah, just you can't see your assumptions because you see with them.
Right. If that's the point they're making, then I think you can hammer it into us early on, but once we get the point, make sure that the character doesn't get the point, but we as an audience do, so we can view it from a higher point where we can kind of start to see a more even-handed approach to it. Elevate it from that.
Because at a certain point, it can feel like you're being lectured to.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, which is fair. I can see that. At the same time, I do, because just to go off what you said, I think it works because Chris Evans doesn't get it. That Chris Evans is kind of blind all the way through. When you get to that action scene in the middle of the train where everyone's got axes and stuff, it's all slowed down and it's got lower music, and it's just him in the scene, but not him consciously present. And it's supposed to be our statement of, this guy never really gets anything. And so,
that's another one of the scenes where I feel like the world building just kind of stops the plot of the movie for a second, because they go over the bridge and that's how they tell it's been a year, and everyone does the 10-9-8 thing. I'm just but you guys were seriously staring each other down, getting ready to kill each other, and then immediately after they go over the bridge, they're still all kind of cool with each other for a sec. They're all looking at each other and smiling oh man, I hate getting older. I'm really? Just serious?
Well, I never saw that as world building. I always just kind of saw it as it's them appreciating the routineness, and at that point it's hammering into you that both sides are exactly the same.
No, I get you. I'm just saying, like, just it feels like it's putting the themes, the ideas, and just the world that they're in, the intricacies of how this world works, because we've changed society to put all of the human race on a goddamn train. So they're going to have their own culture. 20 years later, they're going to have their own culture and traditions by that point, and that's going to be one of them. And so it's a really weird place to put that in when you're right in the middle of a fight, No,
that's fair. I think it works thematically though, so I just never minded it.
I wouldn't have minded it if stuff like that didn't keep happening.
Right.
It's the fact that things like that keep happening over and over again. Like I said, particularly at the end with Chris Evans and what's his face, just sitting there, and the guys are like, I just imagine that all those people in the like club car, which is odd that it's connected directly to Wilfred's house, but whatever. I just imagine that they're all like kind of sitting at the other end of that bridge, like, okay, we're gonna go kick their ass and get our stuff back, but they look like they're having some serious shit right now, so let's just give them a few minutes and then we'll go after them.
Right. No, that's understandable. I think, and to go with Connor's point, I think a lot of this is just a matter of what the movie's trying to do works differently for each person simply because of who the movie's built for. Like, I feel like this movie is designed for the people that are basically blockheads. Like, it's aimed at the people that you can have the best argument in the world prepared for and throw it in their face constantly, and they still don't get it. Like, I feel like it's that.
So the people that leave comments on your YouTube videos.
I feel like this is a movie. I feel like this is a movie that is like verbalizing the frustration of you trying to reach people. Like, there's that line in that song, "Sound of Silence," where he's like, it's like I forget what it is exactly, but like, hear me so I can something like people are hearing without listening. Like, it's that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. In one ear, out the other.
Like it just feels like there is this person that is in a void trying to save people, and they just don't get it. And that's what the movie is. It's that ultimate deprogramming because it wants to break you out of something. And again, that's perfectly symbolized by the train and just this idea of like, the train, it's hammered into you that you need the train to survive. You need the train to survive. The train is all there is, and it's extremely hard to get through it and break through it. But you have to realize that it was designed by people. It wasn't always there. You need to break out of it, no matter how difficult it is. And so you keep ramming at it over and over and over again. And at some point, it breaks and stops. But it only happens after you're constantly pushing at it. That you're constantly digging your way out of a hole.
It's people hearing without listening, just because that was going to drive me crazy.
That's it, yeah. It's one of those songs I listen to a lot, but I can't remember the lyrics for some reason.
Yeah.
I was listening to that song earlier, and I was trying to remember, but it couldn't come to me either.
And now all you'll ever be able to think about is Ben Affleck.
Right?
Anyway, Steve, it's an interesting point, and I kind of wonder then, do you feel like this movie has at times kind of a theme over story thing going for it?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's very much the story is just there so you can get at what thematically matters.
Yeah, because like I guess my initial question watching like when I first heard about this, it was like all of those last survivors of the human race in a frozen world, they're only able to survive on a train that makes tracks around the entire world, and I'm like, why the fuck wouldn't you just go live underground? Like that's always been like, that seems so much more practical. Like, you know what I'm reminded of? It's the dumbest thing, but if either of you watched the George Lopez show when that was on, like his son gets like third place in a science fair because of his science project where he makes like a model of a human being with wings, and he goes, because of global warming, the oceans will rise and swallow up a bunch of the landmass, so we'll have to grow wings in order to survive and get from landmass to landmass. And George just goes, why wouldn't we just live on boats? And his son just feels so sad for a sec. And I feel like that's the conversation I would have with the guy who like wrote or directed this movie. Be like, see, the world is getting so cold that it's impossible for life to live on the surface. So the only way for people to survive is in this train that goes around the entire world year after year. Why wouldn't we just go underground?
Yeah, no.
And then he'd just like look at me and be like, son of a bitch.
That's totally fair. I feel like at the same time though, it is theme over story, and I think ultimately it's just trying to make the case of, well, the ideology has gotten to a point where things like that don't make sense. Like, it's just, it's like that whole idea of people can't conceive of themselves without living in a capitalist society, but they don't realize that we didn't always have that. And so people in this universe, when the world gets worse and worse and worse, they can't conceive of themselves outside of a class system. So they just build a train.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing that I kind of found funny, and maybe I feel like it demonizes the Wilfred more than it does Chris Evans' viewpoint, is Wilfred's essentially a cult leader who was, or one of those crazy apocalypse predictors who just turned out to be right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because like we get his backstory of why he built the train and everything, and it's seriously like, he thought it was going to freeze the world, so he built a train that went around the entire world and never stopped, and it was going to keep the human race alive, and he was right, and he is a genius, and that's why we're all alive. And yeah, I get you, this is the indoctrination of the youth kind of thing, you know, America's the greatest country in the world. If you've ever said that, then you were indoctrinated in school. Congratulations, enjoy your wake-up call. But anyway, like, it's definitely that on a thematic level. At the same time, you know, that's clearly the crazy guy who's saying, you know, the end is nigh character, and he just happened to be right this time and have unlimited resources to build a fucking train that went around the entire goddamn world.
Yeah, and I mean, even that, I like, because it is making that more economic connection of just like every time something bad happens in the economy, people are like, oh, well, we never predicted this, and it's the first time and it will never happen again, and it's an anomaly. But you go look back and it's always happened before, and there were always people that predict it, and there are always those naysayers when things get good because they know where they're eventually leading. And it's just like, this is like validating that idea of economics. It's validating that whole view that people are incapable of seeing the flaws in a system just because it works for them. And so the fact that he's able to build this train and be that naysayer that is now on top is the same thing as that one guy wrote that one paper one time saying that this will happen in the economy, and it happened. Look, he must be a genius. And everyone else is just denying that the infrastructural problems were there in the beginning. Like, they're in denial about how this stuff is supposed to work.
Yeah, and I mean, he gets to be God now, so...
Exactly.
I was actually really surprised that he ended up being alive, and, like, you know, maybe I was hoping for more complexity. Like, I was actually kind of surprised that he ended up being just as cartoonish as every other member of the front of the train. By the time they got to that room and everything, I really was expecting him to just be like an old man busting his ass just trying to keep the thing running. Like, I was really expecting that turnaround to come, to add, you know, complexity, to add another side that, like, yeah, the people in the front are just god awful, but they're still part of humanity, flaws and all, and to him to build the whole train and everything, I thought that's where they were going to go, and I still would have preferred that. I would have preferred some more complexity in it, because I felt like John Hurt's character was more complex than Wilfred's character ended up being.
Yeah.
Sorry to mix actors and character names. I don't know the name of the actor that well.
Wilfred's Ed Harris, and then Gilliam is John Hurt. But yeah, no, I see where you're coming from, but then again, I still just sort of feel like that's what the movie's sort of going for here, and it is this idea of like everything's a cardboard cutout, and the complex layers are there, but how much of them are you and how much of them are just the cartoony nature of how the world operates bleeding into you? And one of the train babies being the only thing that's capable of breaking out of it is because they have no conception of what the world is outside, so they're able to break free from the system in a way that people that are like hung between these two states of the world can't see themselves outside of that infinite cycle. Like it's I feel like it's almost more of like a historical critique than anything else, and just the idea of the world has a very particular cycle that it always goes on regardless of what era you're talking about in history, and us trying to act like we can define things ahistorically is nonsense, because our ideas of the past will always be defined by our ideas of the present. And the more complexity that you get in the cartoon characters, the more you're just hammering in that idea of like, these people think they're smarter than they actually are.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, I thought it would have been really interesting to have him actually not be, as big a monster as everyone else at the front. Like, it kind of annoyed me when they get to the front and, Captain America starts telling him about all the awful things that they in the back have to deal with. And he does the, rich person unable to conceive of true suffering thing, where he's like, well, I have my own problems up here. It's quite noisy. And it's just like, yes, picking up your dog's shit is really hard. Excuse me while I go wait in line for 5 hours to make sure my child has medication, whatever. Like that level of cartooniness, like I was really expecting with the whole, I knew the kids were going to come back. What I was really hoping for to add the complexity, and I thought would have made it more interesting, would have been for him to just be a really old man who knew he was on his last legs, and for him to know that the only way to keep the train running was to pass on his knowledge to someone else. I wanted him to be teaching the kids from the back how to run the train, as opposed to using them as tools. I thought that was... it's a really sick image, and it works with everything you're talking about. Again, I just thought that when you make it that cartoony, it makes it, in my mind at least, harder to take seriously. And like I said earlier, it makes it feel just a little too much like an angry teenager, as opposed to someone that's actually put a lot of thought into these issues.
Yeah, and to add to your point, Ian, what you're saying was one of... I really have a lot of issues with Wilfred. When he said, like, oh, it's noisy up here, I think that was my last straw with that character, because...
That was really early on.
Well, what happened... Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm getting the...
No, I just mean in that scene. That was really early on, so your last straw went really quick.
Well, I'm probably remembering the sequence of events out of order, but he talks about how, I got my own problems, and, as you said, it feels like an angry teenager is, like, writing about how people just don't understand, man. But when it becomes, like, he just starts talking at Chris Evans and, by extension, the audience. He starts explaining the rules.
He stares into the camera at a point.
Yeah, and so... But there becomes a point where he's just talking to him and explaining things, and then he's like, oh, and I want you to take my place, too. Why? You haven't really, like... All you've done is, like, seen an image of him, an image that he's presenting, this image of heroism and this boldness, but he's also kind of not there, but you haven't actually talked to him. You haven't actually, like, had a discussion. You haven't actually, seen if he's the right fit. You've just kind of seen his actions and, oh, you're commendable. And then the idea of, you becoming the thing you dislike. How poetic. Isn't it great? I can turn you into whatever I want you to turn into. But you have to, like, on a thematic level, that is pretty interesting. I just would have preferred if they didn't explain it to us like we're idiots, and then he acts surprised when Chris Evans doesn't go along with it.
And I see where you're coming from, and I hate that I keep saying this, but I still sort of feel like that's the point. I still sort of feel like it's not about getting to know Chris Evans. It's not about figuring out whether or not he as a person is like Wilfred. It is more of just, by the very nature of what we've established with the train, the moment someone like Chris Evans steps forward, they are destined for this. That there is no difference between a revolutionary leader and an oppressive dictator, because at the end of the day, revolution is not the same thing as liberation. And
yeah, it's one of those interesting things where we talk about revolution and, it gets so glamorized, but the thing most people don't realize about a revolution, it becomes an excuse for a lot of the ugliest members of society to go out and just do the things they've always wanted
exactly.
to.
Like, Alex has this phrase that he throws around a lot, and I've always liked it. And it's basically the idea that the reason that we call it a revolution is because it's exactly a 360 degrees turn back to where you started. And I feel like, and I think that's exactly what the point's being made here, is like Chris Evans is not a character. Chris Evans is not a person. Chris Evans is whatever the train and the social constructs around the train need him to be. And because he's so programmed, despite thinking he's not, it just makes it all too easy to get to the front. Like that he is the mindless entity teenager who's just angry. Like he is the guy that doesn't actually have any clue of how to liberate people. He's just mad.
Okay,
and
that's cool,
I don't know.
But...
I think he might have some clue that he isn't good enough. Like I think he knows that he's a good fighter. I think he knows that he's a good tactician, but he doesn't have a good end plan, and that's why he's got some complexity to the character when he's talking to John Hurt's character. He's like, "How can I lead with two arms?" My God, that was a good fucking scene too.
Yeah.
When he describes getting ready to eat a child, oh man.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love that stuff.
Chris Evans is a good fucking actor, dude.
He's great. I think this is his best performance. But like, I think that just goes back to like there is complexity there.
Captain America ate a baby.
Hail Hydra.
Yeah. See,
Hail Hydra.
Captain America #1 makes so much more sense now. This is canon. But it just like, yeah, there's complexity to him.
Can I just say Captain America #1 is actually a really good comic book, and people getting upset over a stupid comic book twist are idiots who don't understand how comic books work.
I agree with you.
Gasp, it's a cliffhanger?
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
No, I absolutely agree with you with the Captain America thing. But no, it's there is complexity there to a degree, but it's the Joker line from Dark Knight. People are only as good as the world allows them to be. And there are certain people with a deeper perspective than Chris Evans, and there are people with less of a perspective than Chris Evans. And just because we spend more time with them, we can see some of the nuances. But at the end of the day, rearranging a couple words in the essay doesn't change the essay. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, the thing is, I do feel like Chris Evans is a character, though. But the problem is, like, as you said, like, him not being a character is vital to the thematic structure of this movie. That's why I think when they try to have their cake and eat it too, by having him spill his guts to the Korean man, and then it is revealed that this guy is a character who does have a past and does have regrets and feelings about his own actions. And I felt it was all like too little, too late to make me care about this guy, only to have Wilfred just talk at him ad nauseum, just forever, and then it makes all the stuff that happened beforehand, like with all the action scenes, they don't really have stakes because he isn't really a character, and I don't really care if he gets to the end or not. But I'm supposed to care, obviously, if there's this big action scene, and the stake is supposed to be whether or not he gets to the end. So
but I don't think it is. I don't think the stake is whether or not he gets to the action thing. I think the stake is.
Then what are the stakes?
The stakes is just what am I watching? The stakes for the whole movie is basically just because it's not a movie that's designed for you to get into anyone's head. It's a movie that's designed for you to constantly search for what the point of it is. And it's not supposed to be something where you care about Chris Evans when he's in a conflict. You care about what the hell is going on, and you care about, in points, what this world has done to these people to make them not people. And from there, you get the thematic depth. Like, it's not. At no point, I don't think you're supposed to really be behind a person. You can certainly understand where they're coming from and have stories and backgrounds, but it's just a couple lines in an essay doesn't change the essay. These people may be different to a degree, but Chris Evans and his emotional baggage is really no different from anyone else. We just didn't spend time with them. And that is supposed to be the point, that there is something inherent to every person that is being completely hidden by the way this world has been constructed, and searching for that meaning constantly is the meaning of the movie. And it's not the emotional connection, it's the look at what this world is, look at what my world is, and then from there build the character relationships of who these people are meant to be representative of in society.
Let me try to jump in here, because I think what Connor's biggest problem with this movie, and I think if I can possibly summarize every point Connor has made, is to Connor less is more.
That
and
is something.
Steve, I think, yeah, I think Steve's big takeaway on this movie is, well, it's trying to just beat it into your head like you're an idiot because the movie thinks that people are idiots for not realizing this already. Would that seem fair to both of you?
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, I would consider the equivalent of this movie in America is Wolf of Wall Street. It's excess to the point of disgust, and that's the point.
And see, I think it's interesting because this kind of thing consistently has not worked for Connor, because you know what else was excess to the point of disgust that Connor hated? Caligula.
Well, the difference between like Wolf of Wall Street and something like this is it's stylized in a way that isn't contradictory.
Oh, this is stylized as hell.
Well, no, but
this,
I mean, like,
don't say this is.
I'm not saying. I think the director does have a great style. I think that the tone and style he's going for is kind of contradictory. Anyways, like what I felt like what he was trying to say. I feel like what Scorsese's saying with Wolf of Wall Street is everything about that is so excessive to the length of that movie that, but it never stops. I never feel like that movie is spinning in its tracks. I always feel like the thing is going somewhere, even if that, somewhere is a crash, because it's supposed to crash at some point. And
it's a movie about Wall Street.
Exactly.
Zing!
But the thing is, like, at a certain point, like, there are scenes in that movie that just keep going on and on, and they're funny for a while, but eventually, like the point where he's like on lewds, like those really old lewds, it's hilarious. But then, like, it just keeps going on, and then you just kind of feel bad, and you feel bad for these people that are just like embarrassing themselves on these drugs. And then it turns to his kid watching him, embarrassing himself on drugs, and then you just feel awful for laughing at this movie. So I think Scorsese had a very methodical approach to, and he knew how to balance the excess with its message and never condoning what these people were doing. Unlike, Pain
and I think I'd argue that the orgy scenes in Caligula do the same thing. And I don't know, I think that's here. I think it's just, I think the scenes that do that the most are the ones that interrupt the plot the most. And that's the biggest problem, is it's not integrated very well into the plot. It feels like we pause. It feels like a video game cutscene. Because, like, everyone, like, has their favorite video game, and they'll have some, like, really great cutscenes sometimes. But, we've all been in the situation where we've played through this game 3 times, we know what's in this cutscene, so we just want to skip it. But occasionally you'll get to those games that you can't skip through the cutscenes, no matter how many times you've beaten the game. And you just get like, okay, like, I love this story and everything, but I've already seen this part. And I want to get past it so I can keep going on the adventure. I feel like the adventure is the plot of this movie, the plot, the action, all that stuff. And then the scenes where it just stops and, like, I feel like it's more world building than anything else, or hitting you over the head with its themes. I feel like that's what's going on more. And again, there's some consistencies of logic in this movie that just don't exist beyond just why the fuck wouldn't they be underground?
Well, okay, I want to go into the...
They keep going forward in the train. Why would they still be having school? Why is the sushi chef just chilling there? Stuff like that.
I kind of actually like some of that stuff where that's kind of...
I did too. I just felt like it...
That's where the arrogance of these people, I think, works in their culture. Because they're like, oh...
No, I get you. I get you. I'm just saying, like, I feel like those scenes work. I just feel like it stumbles. It really throws off the pacing and the drive behind this movie of, we got to get to the front, we got to get to the front, we got to get to the front. And so you lose some of the hammering in of the backs ideology, and in order to get more of the hammering in of the front, where you could just see like I feel like more work could be done visually, just showing you the decadence. Because some of that stuff worked for me more. You know, the hot tub cars and the party car and stuff like that worked for me more as just hammering in just how excessive it is, as opposed to the stuff with the school car, and so on. So I feel like you.
Sorry, go ahead.
I feel like that. I feel like that stuff just is where it's the most theme over story and logic, and so if those scenes had been integrated in a more natural way with the rest of the story, it would have worked better.
I think for Steve and me, this is like his like. I love Dark Knight Rises, and he does not like Dark Knight Rises. He loves Snowpiercer, and I don't like Snowpiercer.
See,
but there. Oh, sorry.
So sorry, I was just gonna say, but I think like the difference for me though, and we don't want to turn this into a Dark Knight Rises review or anything, but like I still feel like even if you like Dark Knight Rises, there are things in there that are just mistakes, and here with Snowpiercer, the things that you may not like are still intentionally there to say something. And like in Dark Knight Rises, it is legitimately just in places that this was them not realizing what they were doing. I think here everything is pointing to a certain thing. Even when you say like the movie stops and like the pacing is thrown off, I think that it is, again, the point of that is just this movie has a very particular way that it moves its cameras between left and right and back and forth, and every time it stops, it is supposed to be characteristic of how you're supposed to be thinking about this movie. And there are things there you can read into and say whether or not they work, but I don't think there's anything in here that is the creators not realizing what they're doing. In the way that Dark Knight Rises, there are places where Nolan is just making mistakes.
Okay.
Fair. That's a fair point.
So, I also wonder how much of this is like just personally like a cultural thing. Like, this is a foreign film. It just is in English. This is made by a Korean director. I know, like, I don't know who produced this, but like the production company is not American, I don't think. It must have been distributed by an American company if it, made it to some theaters in North America.
It's not. All of it is done by South Korean companies that shipped it over to the U.S.
And that makes sense, and some of this filmmaking style might be contrary to what I'm used to seeing, or what I might be used to expecting, or what I might be used to liking or not liking. So it might be a cultural divide in some of the pacing areas, but there are some things I also really don't like, and I don't like how I like how it's established that bullets are extinct. That's awesome. And then, whoa, bullets aren't extinct. That's awesome. Great reveal. The problem with that is then they just start using bullets like they're never ever going to go extinct ever again. Like, I would have liked it if people would have used bullets sparingly, because even though it is thought that they did go extinct, that they still have to use them sparingly because they can possibly go extinct. We only have a limited number of them.
Well, see, we don't really know that, though. I feel like, again, it is just a matter of, like, the back of the train is told certain lies about the way the train operates. And so the bullets just showing up and people spraying and praying like they have infinite amounts of bullets is just, again, that culture of decadence of, like, no, it doesn't matter that everything is going to hell and we're probably all going to die on this train. We'll all live forever and it'll all be great and we don't have to worry about these resources. It is again, just commenting on the very particular mindset these people have, that they don't think about these things. That the fact that bullets would be limited doesn't enter into the mind of a person that's always comfortable.
And importantly, to Steve's point about there being fed lies about how the world works, they were meant to get to a certain point of the train, so that's why the guards at that in the earlier parts didn't have bullets. They were meant to be led into a false sense of security.
I get that, I do. But then we have the people from the back of the train just using bullets like they're nothing, as if this is just weird.
Oh, you mean when they're like fighting each other?
No, like, Chris Evans and Jamie. Like, I know Jamie Bell died before the bullets, right? Okay,
yeah.
But you have Chris Evans and other people.
You talking about like the gunfight around the turn?
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden they're just spraying bullets.
Well, I mean, it's like a gunfight, though.
Yeah, I know, but it's contrary to the logic that these people were socialized. Like, their socialization has told them that there are no bullets. So how come they're just awesome at using guns now?
But then it is consistent with the logic of these people in the back of the train and the people in the front of the train are exactly the same. By the time they get their guns, they're exactly what the people in the front of the train were with their guns. And it further cements that they are the same people.
I think there is a logic to that though, because I mean, it's just that's just like you're in a gunfight. You don't have time to think about that. It is literally the most live or die kind of moment.
Yeah, but you
A lot of
have
those
so you don't have
people
time
were
to think
alive
about rationing.
before the train, so I mean, there's no telling whether or not they actually knew how to use guns beforehand, and they're just using them again here.
that's fine. But
And
they
I mean,
haven't
18
had,
years,
They haven't, like how long can you go without target practice? Without what's his like? Chris Evans shoots somebody like around a bend, and it's like a super accurate. You have to be a really good marksman.
No, he misses everything.
I know, but no, doesn't he hit him?
No, not even one time. I think he gets like a couple shots on the pane of glass.
Yeah, I
but
mean, I think for the most part he misses every shot, and every now and then it's just like a ricochet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I must be remembering it wrong, but I thought like they were just like firing at each other. But either way, sorry, my bad.
No, I think it is a survival thing. Like, they're not thinking about rationing at that point because they're in the middle of a fucking gunfight.
Yeah, and,
Okay.
and for a lot of this, base survival instinct takes over, and ideology takes over, and there's a very weird relationship between these people just wanting to live and these people wanting to be on top. And so by the time you get to the gunfight stuff, it stops being about, or it was really never about this is morally wrong. It was always just about I don't like what's being done to me specifically kind of thing. And then the more they go up, the more they just like are partaking in the luxuries of going forward in the train, because that's just by the very nature. The more money you make as a person, the more you get accustomed to things that you didn't need before, but you can't live without now.
All right. Now, talking with Steve about this does make me want to go back and rewatch it because he is defending the hell out of this movie, and it makes me want to go back and rewatch it.
Yeah, Steve hates everything.
I do.
So he secretly hates this movie. He just doesn't want you to think
I
he
do.
does.
I hate everything. Air sucks. Why am I breathing? Fuck you, air.
Tweet
Fuck
that. Tweet that, Steve. Tweet that. That's a brilliant tweet. You should take over the YouTube channel I Hate Everything and just really start going off on it. Anyway. No, I do think Steve is making a really good case for it. I still don't think that the theme over story argument works for me 100%.
Me neither.
Just because of how damn invasive some of those scenes are. Like I really felt like I looked at my phone a couple times during some of those extended world building scenes. I was surprised there wasn't more commentary on like the technologies that you don't have. Like that was the one thing that they talk about parts going extinct, but that's about the majority that we get out of it.
To be fair, I think some of that might just be because the comic was written in like the early 80s. So there's a lot of technology that wouldn't exist when that was written, and from what I understand, the adaptation is pretty loose, but it is still very consistent with the nature of how the train works and such. So they didn't want to alter too much from that and have computers.
No, I get you. I just think it would have been interesting because, 20 years, computers wouldn't work. Once you have a computer that is 20 years old, you will be lucky if you can get that sucker to power on, right? And they're losing parts for just the mechanics of the train. So, computers aren't a thing, obviously, but I would have been interested to see how people would have been reacting to just the loss of technology, or how they would have adapted technology and stuff. So there's just little stuff like that, just from a sci-fi perspective. It's always one of those things, like Star Trek's this great allegory series for science fiction where we take, an alien race or whatever, and we make them an allegory for this problem in the world. But then you go to another episode and they have some kind of technology that exists that could totally have solved that problem, but they just didn't think of it. And that's just kind of a consistent problem with all of science fiction when it gets all allegorical and less just about the science itself. So just some of the stuff like that I would have liked to see more of, because I don't know, I just enjoy that stuff. And post-apocalyptic people living around in the ruins of society is just kind of an interesting thing for me, so I would have liked to see more of that, just as a personal note kind of thing.
Oh, no, for sure. And I should say that this is a post-apocalyptic movie, and I usually hate those, so...
Yeah, me too. Post-apocalypse isn't really my thing. I love Mad Max, Fury Road. I love Y the Last Man, but that's really the only post-apocalypse stuff that I like.
That's kind of where I'm at. Yeah, like I like Fury Road, I like Road Warrior, and I like Y the Last Man, and then this, and that's kind of about it. I don't care for anything that deals with post-apocalypse just because I have the issue that Connor has.
Planet of
why
the
should
Apes?
I care?
Planet of
I've
the
never
Apes?
seen Planet of the Apes.
Planet of the Apes is more societal, so it's a different thing for me. Like the Planet of the Apes, they do function as a group, so it doesn't feel like the same sort of disconnect as just living in the desert doing nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess it depends on how you define apocalypse, right?
Yeah, that's fair. No,
Apocalypse is Oscar Isaac.
That's awesome.
Is that your Oscar Isaac imitation? I am here now.
I can't believe he's going.
I know, he sounds
Jeez.
like a malfunctioning like carburetor.
Right? He's just going and going.
That is my dry laugh for you, Connor.
Okay.
I hope you appreciate it.
I do. I really do. So, I don't know. I know this is just like, it's just a personal thing, but this movie's lack of subtlety got on my nerves. There's also, I know this is, I'm pretty much nitpicking at this point, but when something just isn't working for you, you know how like every little thing just starts to piss you off?
Yeah.
Yeah, Scott Snyder's Batman.
Oh man. So there's like the henchmen in this movie just progressively got more and more annoying for me because they don't have.
It is kind of weird when he just magically comes back to life.
Yeah,
it seems like just generally make sure people are dead when you kill them.
Yeah.
Like just general advice for everybody: if you ever kill someone, just really make sure they're dead. What you've already committed murder. Just get a couple extra stabs in so it doesn't come back to bite you in the ass.
You don't even need to watch Zombieland to know to double tap. Like, come on. But there's like the bad guy just kept like the henchmen just showed up. They're not. I don't think they're cool. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's just like a Boba Fett thing. I never thought Boba Fett was cool. I never thought these guys were cool. They just show up and strut around and act all tough. They don't have any characters. They just fight. And I'm supposed to think that's cool because of the way it's shot.
And here's where Steve's gonna give like this great explanation about how they're a representative of the fist of society coming down upon you. They're the representation for the criminal justice system and how it unfavorably or disproportionately affects the poor.
I mean, I was just gonna say that it's basically just base instinct brutality, and that's the point of it. It's like, oh, look at how cool this action scene is, except it's not, because you're applauding people getting the crap kicked out of them for no real good emotional reason or moral reason. And so, like, they're not cool, but they're not supposed to be either.
But the way they're shot with all the slow-mo and the choreography and like...
Yeah, like it's supposed to be this big, grand, epic action scene, and you don't feel anything because by that point you're to this place of like, all they're doing now is perpetuating the violence and the stupidity of what this system is, and the action scene's supposed to be not working on that cool action level despite being shot on that level because it's at that point proving its point of, yeah, you finally broke free of the programming a little bit. If you just showed someone that scene out of context, they would be like, oh, shoot, oh, cool, that's awesome, that's a fun scene. And then they watch the movie and realize, oh, no, it's not good. It's not fun.
But I'm not feeling the irony. I'm just feeling boredom.
But that might just be because you haven't latched on to the themes at that point. If you do, then it works perfectly, and if you haven't, then it doesn't.
Steve, let me ask a question of you real quick. How long after reading Communist Manifesto did you watch this movie? No, I mean, like, I'm not joking. I'm dead serious, because I know you've read it, and there's a lot of like ideas about deprogramming and stuff in that.
I actually watched this movie several times before that. This is one of those movies that more so pulled me over to Alex's side, and I read Communist Manifesto after I realized I fell in love with this movie. And then I was able to verbalize it more.
Gotcha. No, I was just curious about that, because like there's some stuff in that, and like I still think my greatest critique of the Communist Manifesto is it sure would be better if you talked more about communism and just not capitalism. You ever notice that? Like 90% of that thing is him just railing on capitalism. It's really weird.
Yeah, no, it is. But again, that's part of why I love it. I love the library of that work of building the idea of communism. But then that having more parallels here, just because it is a scathing critique of the system.
Yeah. I just find that generally amusing. And I was curious how much that lined up. So yeah, I think that really works. That you're able to vocalize more of your what you liked about this movie after reading that, because I think those two are intricately linked, and it's worth pointing out once again, Korean director.
Yeah.
South Korean director. There's a very interesting relationship. If you've looked at any other of Bong Joon-ho's movies, like Mother or The Host, like he's got a very good history of using communist ideas, criticizing capitalism, but then also very, very obviously focusing on the human connection to art and the evolution outside of systems of control through art.
Gotcha.
And I don't know if this is I think this is one of his later movies. He has a good series of them before this. He did what was it, Memories of Murder, like 10 years before this, and that's brilliant.
Interesting. I haven't seen any of his other stuff as far as I know.
Either. I knew about The Host because everyone in the mid-2000s just always talked about how awesome it was to have a great modern monster movie. But I never saw it.
No, I've never seen this.
It's like a giant tadpole. It's not that terrible Stephanie Meyer adaptation.
It's not that. Oh. It's kind of like a Godzilla movie, but not a Godzilla movie. But it's fun.
So it didn't come out in 2013, correct?
No. The Host came out...
Wait.
What?
The Host.
Yeah,
It's not the David Hyde Pierce film, is it?
No. It's all...
Okay, because there's a movie he did called... Okay, there's a movie David Hyde Pierce did called The Perfect Host.
Okay, that's not this. Yeah, no. The Host that Bong Joon-ho did came out like at least 10 years ago, 2005, 2006, something like that. Yeah. And it was more so like Godzilla, but then also combining that with the idea of like military waste in South Korea and the effects of chemical warfare and such, creating monsters. It's basically Godzilla 2014, but good.
Hey now, Godzilla 2014 was... well, I can't say it's good because I can't be objective about Godzilla, so... Look, I'm not saying
it's bad either. It's just I don't think it's a very good Godzilla movie.
Okay, that's fair. Because like the thing with me though is like if Godzilla shows up and he looks like Godzilla, he breathes blue fire, he whacks tail, and he kills monsters and he knocks over buildings, then I'll probably like it. Like I cannot be objective with Godzilla.
That's
don't like
fair.
the night. I can't.
Anyway,
I don't know. That's just the way I grew up.
That's totally fair. There's almost no way.
You should watch Bill's. Yeah, my only thing with Godzilla 2013, every single thought I've had about that movie, Bill did in his 3.5-hour review.
Okay.
So go watch that. That's all I have to say. Anyway, does anyone have any final thoughts they want to get out on Snowpiercer?
I think I'm good.
I think I'm alright.
Death to the bourgeoisie.
Yeah.
Just throw that one in there for Alex, I guess. I saw a tweet that ranked the levels of communism or the levels of how much of a communist you are, and this was Existential Comics, so I loved it. So the bottom level was understanding the bourgeoisie's control of the system and how they take advantage of the proletariat. The second level was being able to pronounce the word bourgeoisie correct. And the third level was being able to spell it on the first try.
Your boss, I love the comics. Your boss calls you into your office, and you're like, just hang on a second, I'm spreading some communist propaganda. And your boss is like, yeah, that's kind of what I want to talk to you about. Have you...
I got called into my office today, and I got a surprise raise. That was really nice.
Congratulations.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, I was pretty happy about that.
That's awesome. So hey, can you tell your kid to stop saying everything is fascist propaganda in our classroom? And then the guy's like, well, have you tried not teaching fascist propaganda?
Oh man, that's good shit. Okay, let's go ahead and do a rating on Snowpiercer. I will give Snowpiercer. Okay, I'm gonna do 2 scores for Snowpiercer. I'll give Ian before this review would have given Snowpiercer a 2.5 out of 5 child laborers stuck in the gears that for some reason don't get out, and I don't understand why. I, after this review, am going to give Snowpiercer a 3.5 out of 5 cricket bar or cockroach vermin bars that you can lovingly eat while other people have food that frankly isn't much better. Fuck sushi. Like, that was a really weird thing to try to juxtapose. Like, oh, she's eating something disgusting. Well, your motherfucker's eating sushi. So, this is an odd scene, but whatever. It's Korean, I guess. Anyway, Connor, how about you?
I'm gonna just try to, give this movie as a movie its own score because, like, on a personal level, this movie just irritates me. It just gets under my skin at every turn. But I'm gonna give this movie 2 out of 5 drunk Ed Harrises.
And Steve?
I'm going to give this 5 out of 5 hopeful polar bear ending shots.
You don't get too many hopeful polar
No, you
bears.
don't. You really don't. Especially after that Earth 1 video we did.
Yeah.
They're too busy falling off of ice caps.
Mm-hmm. And now we're all sad, thanks to Connor.
What are we doing next week? Or who's picking next week?
I'm not sure. This is the problem when we don't have a consistent third person, as it throws off the pick order.
The rotation's kind of screwed.
Yeah. Connor, what are you up to next week? No, wait, fuck you. You already picked 2 first. I'm not giving you the topic. Connor just got, like, all hopeful. He was, like, smiling, and it was like, oh, man, I can't wait to suggest a topic. And I'm like, fuck you, Connor.
I thought you were gonna like not because like I have a very inconsistent work schedule. Like I never know when I'm working on Fridays.
No. If you're free, you're always welcome to join us anytime you'd like. Unless I just generally don't feel like talking. I just like being a... Can we just do a video about being a dick to Connor? It'll just be us making fun of Connor for like an hour and a half. Would anyone else besides me find that entertaining?
We should have a whole month where we just randomly pick someone and be a dick to them while they're on the show. We just have roast episodes.
Oh my god.
Oh, that'd be fun to do a roast. We're coming up on 300 episodes, and we're gonna do 300. Just because.
Oh, duh. Why wouldn't you? It's too obvious, man.
It's that joke. Like, I said that when we did our 200th episode. When we get to 300, we'll do the movie because that joke is too good to give up. Anyway, so what are we gonna talk about? Let's just, since we did a review, we need a topic. I came up with the topic last time. Steve, what was the last thing you picked?
I picked this, so... yeah.
Fucking Christ, son of a bitch, cocksucker.
I picked the last topic.
Any other... We're gonna come up with... We're gonna talk about vulgarity. No, what's a good one?
Just think,
I'm in a real Looney Toony mood, so I want to do something with that, but I'll hold off until I get another review pick.
Looney Tunes is something you'd always need more context for to talk about, yeah.
Oh, how about... This is going to be a really, really meta fucking video, and I kind of wanted something just stupid, but it's all that's coming to mind for me. So, Steve, what, in your opinion, is one of the most hotly contested debates in philosophy over the last 100 years?
Over the last 100 years, specifically?
And not 100. Let me back that up. Let it go 50 to 60 years.
Last 50 to 60 years. There's a couple. The biggest thing that comes to mind right now is the objective-subjective distinction.
No. I'm thinking a little more concrete.
A little more concrete than that. Not continental versus analytic. The value of epistemology is something that also comes to mind.
No, I'm not thinking about just like of philosophy's like own little wheelhouse, philosophy in the world. I'm thinking we're going to talk about can machines think?
Oh, okay.
Because I think that is one of the biggest, most fascinating questions that's been brought up with philosophy, and geeky sci-fi shit has just run wild with it. And I find that to be a very, very interesting discussion. I might just go visit my college sometime during the week, because we have just, in the philosophy department, it's our chair's like favorite topic. And so he made a bunch of posters that just have like every single argument of note that has been made on the subject. And there are just like 6 posters just filled with these things.
That's interesting. I might have to do some research on that then, yeah.
Because it's one of those things, like everyone probably has this knee-jerk reaction for yes or no right now as they listen to this, but it's one of those topics that I know how I felt about it the second I heard the question posed to me, and the more I think about it, the more I don't fucking know. So we're going to get into it next week. That should be fun.
If you ever thought philosophy was a subject you'd find out more things about the world through, you're completely wrong, and you will understand that through this topic, because you will know even less.
Yep. Should be a fun time. So Connor, like I said, if that's something that's interesting to you, you are more than welcome to come on next week. It's not something that you fundamentally need a background in philosophy for, which is why I like it.
Also, just because you know movies, and almost every argument I've read in philosophy about this would reference a movie or basically create a movie premise to defend their point.
Yep.
I like how we unintentionally foreshadowed this decision by referencing Transcendence earlier.
Part of it was the whole transhumanism thing, and I think that'll get into it.
And I mean, everyone knows my favorite superhero movie is Age of Ultron, and Ultron is a very complicated cog in this machine.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and get into it next week. All right, everyone, thanks very much for watching, though. Until next time, I'm the philosopher.
I'm the politician.
And I'm sexually traumatized, but getting better.
And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.